The ocean keeps its promises, but it does not keep them kindly. It kisses the shore and withdraws, brings life and swallows it whole. It is the great keeper of time and silence, and of secrets never returned. On the southeastern edge of what would one day be America, beneath stars unbothered by the passage of centuries, there was once a settlement, Roanoke. Not of grand cities or glittering walls, but of wooden dwellings and soft voices carried on the sea breeze. A fragile thread of England woven into the wild tapestry of the New World. And then, nothing. No screams, no scorched remains, just the hush of trees, the hush of salt water, the hush of a place that had vanished. What happened there remains one of the oldest unsolved mysteries of the New World. So before we begin, settle in. Let your breath ease. Let your shoulders soften. Let your thoughts drift like the tides that still kiss the Carolina shores. And if you're listening under a quiet sky tonight, tell me in the comments, what do the stars look like where you are? Now gently, let us go back to a time when the world was still wild and a promise of Emma whispered through the trees. The late 1500s were a time of ambition, when monarchs dreamed of new lands and the sea was a road paved with storms and conquest. Queen Elizabeth I sat upon England's throne, her eyes fixed westward. Spain had grown fat with gold from its colonies, and England was late to the feast. Walter Raleigh, a man of courtly grace and fierce ambition, won the Queen's favor and a charter, a grant to colonize lands across the Atlantic in her name. And so under Raleigh's banner, ships were fitted, men chosen, maps unrolled across candle-lit tables, plans laid down like roots on parchment. But the first expeditions brought only false starts and friction. A military colony failed in 1585, clashing with native tribes and abandoned within a year. Yet still, Raleigh believed. And still, they tried again. In the spring of 1587, a new group set sail. This time, not just men of war, but families, women, children. Among them, Eleanor Dare, pregnant with her first child, and her father, John White, a skilled artist, now chosen as governor. 117 souls, crossing the Atlantic, guided by dreams and by desperation. Roanoke Island was not their first choice. They had been bound for Chesapeake Bay, but the privateer piloting their ship, anxious to return to his raids, refused to sail further north. He left them on Roanoke's shores, the skeleton of the first failed colony, still scattered in the sand. It was not ideal. The soil was thin, supplies already strained. But they began again, mending walls, planting seeds, sending out cautious greetings to nearby native peoples. Among these tribes was the Croatoan, once friendly with the English. But tensions simmered across the region. The English had brought not just goods, but disease, and blood had already been spilled in earlier years. Yet for a time, there was calm, and in August of that year, Eleanor Dare gave birth. A daughter, Virginia, the first English child born in the Americas, a symbol of hope, of permanence, of the future Raleigh envisioned. But dreams do not fill bellies, and food was scarce. The colony needed help. John White, governor, grandfather, was begged to return to England for supplies. He did not wish to go, but he promised to come back. He kissed his daughter goodbye, held baby Virginia once more, and set sail. He would never see them again. 3 years passed, not weeks, not months, years. England was at war with Spain. All ships were seized for defense of the realm. John White pleaded and waited. By the time he returned, it was 1590, and Roanoke was empty. Croatoan, the word carved into a weathered post, neat, measured, not hurried, not afraid, no signs of struggle, no graves, no bones. The dwellings were dismantled, the fort disassembled with purpose. It was as though the settlers had moved. But where and why? There was no sign of distress. No Maltese cross carved beside the word, as had been agreed upon in face of trouble. Only Croatoan, a name, a clue, and a silence that has never been broken. John White's journey back across the sea was not the swift errand of a worried father. It became a trial drawn out by storms, by war, and by the quiet indifference of powerful men. As England braced for Spain's mighty armada, every ship and sailor was called to service. White pleaded for passage, for aid, for even a single vessel. But Raleigh's fortune had waned, and John's urgency, though heavy with personal grief, was lost amid the larger tides of empire. 3 years. That's how long it took before he could return. The Atlantic is vast, even in good weather. But in those days, it was something more. A creature of moods, a vast, breathing force that could calm or kill without reason. As White's ship neared the shores of Roanoke in August of 1590, it did so beneath a sky torn with storms, waves rising like hills to obscure the horizon. Even as the coast drew near, nature seemed unwilling to make the homecoming easy. But come ashore, he did. And what he found, or rather what he didn't, would haunt him for the rest of his life. There was no welcome, no laughter, no familiar faces running down the beach. The settlement was eerily quiet, like a stage after a play has ended, every actor gone. The houses were gone, dismantled neatly rather than destroyed. Tools and personal belongings had vanished. There were no signs of war, no graves, no remains. It was as though the colony had stood up one morning, looked at the sea, and walked away. Except for one thing. A tree, weathered, tall, and silent. On it, a word had been carved. Croatoan. Another post bore only the letters C-R-O. It was the name of a nearby island, modern-day Hatteras Island, where the Croatoan tribe lived. A people who, at one time, had been friendly toward the English. There was no cross carved into the bark to signal distress, as the settlers had agreed to do if forced away by danger. No signs of fire, no blood. Just those carved letters, like a final message scratched hurriedly onto the skin of the forest. White's heart must have leapt at the possibility. Had they simply moved, sought refuge with allies? Could his daughter still live? Could he yet hold his granddaughter again? But fate would not give him that chance. The seas turned violent once more. The captain of White's ship, fearing shipwreck, refused to linger. They sailed away, unable or unwilling to search the island named in the carving, unable to chase the whisper of hope left in the forest's edge. John White would never return. He died in England years later, never knowing what became of the people he left behind. His family, the settlers who had once looked to him for leadership. His was a grief that lived in silence, unanswered. Back across the ocean, the land went on without them. The trees grew thicker. The winds reclaimed the paths. The fires went cold and never burned again. Roanoke was empty, but it had not always been. Before the English came, Roanoke Island had a story of its own. The Carolina coast is a place of whispers, of pine forests that sway and sigh, of marsh grasses that hum beneath the moon. Long before any English ship kissed its shores, the Algonquian-speaking peoples lived and thrived here. Their villages dotted the rivers and inlets. Their canoes cut across the water with quiet grace. Their stories, woven into the stars and the stones, spoke of harmony with land and sea, of spirits that walked beside them. The arrival of the English was not the beginning of history here. It was a turning point, a disturbance, and like all ripples, it spread. The first English attempts at settlement in the 1580s were clumsy and, at times, cruel. The colonists misunderstood the cycles of this land. They built fences where none were needed, took what was not offered. The balance was upset. At times, peace was possible. Brief flickers of understanding. But mistrust grew quickly, and as supplies dwindled, desperation sharpened every decision. The colony that arrived in 1587 tried to do better. They came with families, with children, with seeds, not just to conquer, but to begin. Still, the damage had been done. The region was tense, and the settlers knew it. That's why the name Croatoan, carved into the tree, mattered so much. Of all the tribes, the Croatoan had remained the most welcoming. Manteo, a man of that tribe, had even sailed to England and returned, a bridge between two worlds. If the settlers had to move, it made sense they would go to Croatoan lands. They might have survived, lived, even blended in. But if so, they left no trace that we can definitively claim. No letters, no signs of English lives among the native ones, no descendants with English names that history could confirm. Only questions, the kind that echo through the branches when the wind blows just right. Roanoke became more than a place. It became a ghost. And soon it would become a story. One that would be told in taverns and whispered in corridors of power. A warning, a riddle, a beginning, with no middle and no known end. The mystery of Roanoke did not fade with time. It deepened. Like a well that never hits bottom, the absence of answers only fed speculation. And so, over the centuries, Questions poured in like rain into that quiet soil, each generation offering its own explanation for the colony's vanishing. Some theories stand rooted in reason. One of the oldest suggests the settlers did exactly what the carved word implied. They went to live with the Croatoan people. That perhaps hunger, dwindling supplies, and isolation forced them to abandon the fort and seek safety among allies. If they did, they may have blended into the tribe, taken native names, worn native clothes, and in time, forgotten the language of England altogether. There is some logic in this. Oral traditions from tribes along the Carolina coast speak of pale-skinned ancestors. Some claimed to recall tales of Europeans joining their villages, of a mingling long ago. Even 18th and 19th century explorers reported encountering indigenous people with grey eyes, or speaking a few English words, passed down like artifacts from another age. But these stories, though haunting, remain unconfirmed. No physical evidence has ever solidly linked these communities to the Roanoke settlers. No grave has been found, no journal, no child's toy bearing an English mark. Just whispers. Others believe the settlers tried to return to England, building a boat or several small ones and setting out to sea. If so, they would have faced storms, starvation, and the endless blue horizon. No ship was ever found. No survivors ever claimed to have made the voyage. There are darker theories too. Some suggest the colony fell to disease. Not just hunger or scurvy, but something virulent, sudden and unseen. But bodies leave signs. Mass death leaves decay. And the island had none of that. Others blame violence, perhaps a raid by a hostile tribe, angered by prior English aggression. But again, the absence of struggle, no burnt structures, no blood, no scattered belongings, makes this difficult to believe. The settlement was not torn apart. It was unbuilt, undone with care. There is the Spanish theory as well. Spain, still dominant in the Americas, may have sent agents to destroy the English outpost before it could gain a foothold. Yet Spanish records, meticulous and vast, hold no mention of such an operation. Some have looked skyward or elsewhere. Over time, the line between theory and folklore blurred. Theories involving curses, supernatural forces, even time slips or alien intervention emerged in fringe corners. That the land rejected the settlers, that the island itself moved, that they stepped into something older than any map. But perhaps it is the silence that invites such imagining. Nature, after all, reclaims everything in time. On Roanoke Island, the trees grew back, taller and more ancient. The winds swallowed the names, and the waves, ever rhythmic, never told what they saw. Centuries later, explorers would return again and again, hoping to find some shard, some answer. They unearthed relics, a rusted sword hilt, a piece of armor, shards of pottery. But these too could have come from earlier voyages. Nothing definitive. Nothing signed by the lost hands of Eleanor or Virginia Dare. And so the word Croatoan, carved into wood, carved into history, remains the only true evidence that they were ever there. and that they ever left. For a long time, Roanoke became more ghost story than history. Children heard of it in school books and wondered what it meant for a whole community to vanish. Artists painted the mystery, writers wove it into novels, and the land, though changed, still held the weight of the unknown. There were those who claimed to hear things on the island, a name whispered on the wind, a baby's cry that echoed without source, footsteps in the sand with no one to cast them, none of it provable, all of it persistent. The lost colony became a symbol, not just of failure or abandonment, but of something deeper, the fragile line between presence and absence, between what is remembered and what is simply gone. Theories would keep coming. Excavations would resume. But the trail, for most of its long history, remained as cold as the stone foundations buried beneath the pine roots. Time does not forget, not completely. It simply covers. It wraps stories in layers of soil, of moss, of silence, and waits for patient hands, for curious minds, for the right moment to speak again. Centuries after the colony disappeared, the story of Roanoke still held the imagination of scholars, explorers, and those who simply couldn't let it go. They came with shovels, maps, and metal detectors. They studied satellite images, ancient letters, and weather patterns. They listened to oral histories carried by the descendants of tribes long since scattered. Because beneath the myths and mystery, there was still one truth that lingered. Something had happened here. And perhaps the land remembered. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, early archaeological digs began on Roanoke Island and neighboring areas. What they found was compelling but inconclusive. Fragments of European pottery, a few iron tools, some glass beads. The challenge was this. The Carolina coast had hosted not just the 1587 colony, but multiple voyages and encounters both before and after. The artifacts could belong to nearly anyone. The soil does not label its layers, and the years blend one into the next, like watercolors left in the rain. Still, the search deepened. In 1998, a team from East Carolina University began working in earnest to trace the path the settlers might have taken, if indeed they had left the island. They examined routes to the mainland, looking for signs of settlement along the Albemarle Sound and beyond. Then came a curious clue, buried not beneath the earth, but hidden in ink. In 2012, scholars re-examining John White's original map of the region, now held at the British Museum, discovered something strange. Under a patch on the map, barely visible without infrared light, was a symbol, a small red and blue star. Some believe it marked a fort or settlement, possibly one White intended to build or knew had been built inland. This site, near the confluence of the Chowan and Roanoke rivers, became a new focus for research. Archaeologists dubbed it Site X. Excavations followed, and there, in the quiet fields of Bertie County, they found more artifacts, some European, some indigenous, ceramics, tools, a piece of slate with a trace of English pencil marks. Again, nothing that shouted definitively Roanoke, but enough to whisper, maybe. Nearby, another dig known as Site Y, offered further fragments. Together, these sites suggest that at least some members of the colony may have moved inland, possibly integrating with native tribes, possibly forming a small, scattered settlement far from where they were left. Still, the picture is incomplete. There is no definitive signature, no journal tucked beneath a floorboard, no family crest etched in stone. Only the artifacts of a life paused. Pieces that may or may not belong to the 117 souls who stepped off the beach into mystery. And yet the work continues. Every summer, teams return to dig a little deeper. Every winter, scholars pore over letters and maps once again. Advances in technology, like ground-penetrating radar and genetic testing, offer new tools, new hopes. The sands may still give up their secrets, or not. But even now, the land is not silent. The trees bend, the waters curl along the shore. And sometimes, in the spaces between wind and stillness, a name rises again. Virginia, the child born of two worlds, the first, the last. She, like the others, left no trace that the earth has yet revealed. But the hope remains that someday, someone will find something small, a carved name, a buried token, and the silence will break, if only a little. We are drawn to mysteries, not just to solve them, but to feel the shape of the unknown, to run our fingers along its edges, to wonder what could have been. Roanoke is one of those mysteries. It's not simply a story of people who disappeared. It's a story of what they carried, hopes, tools, names spoken into newborn ears. A story of risk, of reaching across an ocean to begin again, and of how that fragile dream was swallowed by silence. What makes Roanoke linger in the imagination is not the violence of its end, because, truthfully, we don't know if there was any violence at all. It's the quietness of it, the completeness. A whole settlement, gone, without sound or scar. And in that stillness, we find ourselves asking questions not just of them, but of ourselves. What do we leave behind when we go? What parts of us are remembered, and what parts simply fade? For the English crown, Roanoke was a failed colony, a disappointment. But for those who lived there, it was home. However briefly, it was where children laughed, meals were shared, hands were held against ocean winds. It's easy to turn the story into metaphor, the lost colony, the forgotten beginning. But these were people, with faces, with voices. Eleanor Dare, watching her father sail away. John White, standing on the deck years later, staring at a shoreline he no longer recognized. Little Virginia, perhaps held in her mother's arms as the settlers made their final choice, wherever that road led. And though we remember them today as lost, they were not careless. They carved a message. They left a trace. They tried, even in those final unknown moments, to be found. Yet we have not found them. And perhaps that's the power of the story, that it refuses to end, that the question remains open, like a book with its last chapter torn away. We do not know where they went, We do not know what became of them. But the fact that we still ask means something. It means their story did not vanish. It waited. In the breath of wind through the pines, in the shifting of sand on a forgotten shore, in the word etched on an old post, still echoing through time. Croatoan. Not a cry for help, not a goodbye, just a name, as if to say, look here, begin again, follow us. There are stories that end with certainty, with inked signatures, with dates etched in stone. But Roanoke is not one of those. It ends instead with wind, with the rustle of pine needles on an empty trail, with the echo of waves brushing a shore no longer mapped. It ends with the simplest of truths. They were there. And then they weren't. And yet, in another way, they never truly left, because their mystery lives on, not in the manner of grand monuments or bustling cities, but in the quieter spaces, between pages of half-told history, in the eyes of a child hearing the story for the first time, in the way the word Croatoan still stirs something unspoken in the curious and the kind-hearted alike. In the centuries that followed, Roanoke became more than an incident. It became a mirror, a way for each new era to see its own questions reflected. Were the colonists betrayed by those they hoped to befriend? Or did they find kinship, acceptance, a new beginning among strangers who became something more? There are tribes along the coastal Carolinas, descendants of the Croatoan and others, who have passed down stories of pale visitors, of shared customs, of English words appearing like driftwood in the oral traditions of their people. Yet history, as written by empire, so often ignored these voices. Only recently have they begun to be truly heard. And what of Virginia Dare, the child born of two worlds? She remains a symbol wrapped in contradiction. For some, she's a sign of promise. For others, a tragic note in a tale of colonization and loss. Her name has been given to streets, to schools, to statues. But the child herself is still missing, not only in body, but in story. In 1937, during the height of the Great Depression, a curious stone surfaced in North Carolina, a slab of quartzite carved with a tale of hardship and death, allegedly from Eleanor Dare to her father, John White. It spoke of the colony's journey inland, of disease, of dwindling numbers, and at its end, a list of the dead, Eleanor included. For a time, it was hailed as a breakthrough, but more stones followed. Too many, too polished. Most historians now consider them a hoax, though the first among them still carries a sliver of doubt. Real or not, they reflect a yearning to fill the void, to imagine the last words of a mother who vanished into the trees. Yet even in the absence of answers, Roanoke offers something rare, a place where the known and unknown meet gently, without violence, a place to sit quietly beside history's long breath and wonder, not in fear, but in reverence. The island itself is no longer untouched. Roads wind through its forests. Tourists walk the same sands where settlers once looked out to sea. But the essence remains. Stand beneath the trees near the old earthen fort, and you may still hear it. The hush, the stillness where something once was. the suggestion of footsteps lost to time. And if you walk the trail as dusk falls, if you pause where the path bends and the air turns soft, you might feel it, a presence that is not threatening, but watching, waiting, not for rescue, but for recognition. Because Roanoke was not just lost, it was left to memory, left to legend, left to those willing to listen for the stories buried not in words, but in wonder. Perhaps in time we'll learn more. A buried diary, a tooth marked by English hands, a bone not yet turned to dust beneath a riverbank farther inland. But even if we don't, perhaps that's all right. Some stories need mystery. Some silences deserve to remain unbroken. What matters is that we remember they were here, that they tried, that they carved a name into wood before walking into history's long night. Thank you for wandering through this story with me. If it brought you peace tonight, if it stirred something quiet within, please gently like, subscribe, and share this tale with someone who cherishes quiet mysteries too. And now, as you lay your thoughts to rest, close your eyes. Let the waves return to the shore. Let the trees there, and hush the world, and sleep well, knowing that even the lost are never truly gone.